My whole life created a story that as soon as I'm 18 and I can do this, I'm gonna go out there and build a big business and make a lot of money and get a wife. And when I have those things, I'll find love. No one has mastered life. You find that the truth of what you've been seeking for all along, it's not out there. It's not in a goal. It's not in a certain amount of money. It's not in an accomplishment. It's in here. And my spiritual journey began. And that's where I found myself literally like everything that I had built in life no longer mattered, because I started to realize that I was really unhappy. And when I think of plant medicine, when I think of ayahuasca, for example, or when I think of mushrooms, you know, I think of something that is not man-made. I think of something that it comes from the earth. It's literally the medicine that God has given us to heal ourselves.
Welcome, Danny Morel, to the Turning Your Adversity into an Asset podcast. It's great to have you here in London.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And it's interesting because you've only just recently moved to London, so it's great that we got to do this in person, because otherwise whereabouts are you usually?
Austin,
okay. And that's,
yeah, and we're only going to be here we'll be here for about 3 months.
Yeah.
My fiance we're having a baby. So
amazing.
we're here to have the baby here. Thank you.
Well, do you know what was interesting? Because I saw that on your Instagram, and so you live in America, but where are you?
Born in New York.
Born in New York.
But I guess my heritage is Hispanic.
Interesting. Okay, so your heritage is Hispanic, but your wife is English.
She's English, yeah.
My wife is Hispanic,
yeah,
and I'm English, and we're also having a baby here in England. That's why I'm here.
Oh, wonderful.
We lived in Bali for 3 years, and are coming back here. This is a good place to do it. I can't actually get into America as well because I've got a criminal record. Long story.
Oh wow.
So I wasn't allowed in.
Okay.
So England was the only place we could have the baby. So we're also here to have a baby. So we'll have a joint baby. When is yours due?
September 26th.
Wow, it's October the 1st.
Yeah.
So we're going to be having babies at the same time. Boy or girl, do you know?
A girl.
Okay, we're having a boy.
Boy, I knew that. I felt that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, some similarities there. So how are you enjoying London so far, other than the parking?
Other than the parking, man, that was a nightmare. I don't like being late. And so, I got here 10 minutes early. In America, normally all of the buildings have like a little parking lot. Right. So I'm thinking I'm just going to be able to pull into the parking space and get out. I literally drove around for 45 minutes until I gave up, and I had to park at Tesco, which is the shopping center, and I had to walk 22 minutes to get over here. So it was rough. But speaking about turning adversity into a strength, I was telling you, I was really proud of myself that at a certain point in time in my life, my ego would have been so big that I would have been mad. And it taught me a lesson. Like I was able to walk and calm down and get my energy in check. And so I guess that was the lesson from it all, is that, I've come a long way, because at another time in my life, like this would have caused, some sort of massive flare up, and I would have been mad at my team when there's nothing that they could have done. And it just is what it is. So it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Well, we're still here. We made it work, and hopefully we'll get a powerful session out of it.
Let's do it.
It will reinforce that even further. So yeah, talking about turning adversity into an asset, I'd love to hear sort of your story as far back as it goes. I know that, like a lot of people that have success, they start with humble beginnings, and things weren't always as good as they are on the surface now. So where did it all start? Let's go right back.
Yeah, it all started, I think, for me when my parents got divorced. I was 13, and I was the oldest of 3 boys. And my parents got divorced, and my mom moved us from New York to California. And in doing so, we went from a 2-income household to a 0-income household, because my mom didn't know how to, or like she couldn't get a job. And she happened to be, and this is really important, but you really do become like those you surround yourself with. And so I had an aunt who I love her, I love her to death. And yet, her consciousness was one where, she just lived from the government. And so, my mom is there, and she's seen my aunt get all this free money. And so she decided to do the same. And my mom went from being a hardworking woman to, living from the government, quite frankly. And I remember that pained me, and it bothered me because I always had like a certain standard for how we wanted to live, even at that young age. And so, I took that to heart. And by the time I was 18 years old, things weren't getting better. At one point in time, we were living, basically just off of food stamps, which in America, they basically pay for your groceries and stuff. And I thought to myself, like, here we are in this crummy apartment, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. We're living in the ghetto, basically, in America. I can remember playing baseball with my little brother outside the entrance there, and seeing the SWAT team like break into apartments because there were drug dealers all around us. And I thought to myself, like, this is okay for, maybe even some of my family members that live close by, but I don't want this, I don't want this. And so at 18 years old, I remember thinking, I was laying in bed. It was the day after I graduated from high school. And I had, like these two little voices, right? And one of the voices said, like, go get a job. And I want to start off by saying there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting a job, As a matter of fact, I think the people that work for us, like, love working for us. We have a really laid back, loving environment. It's just what I knew of as a job wasn't going to help me get to my goals per se. And another voice said, like, take a risk and go into business. And I remember the voice, the negative voice said, but nobody in your family has a business, And the other voice said, well, if you have a business, maybe you could buy your mom a house. And I, like this little debate happened. I clearly remember like laying down in the apartment, in the bedroom. And I believe it was a moment in my life that like shaped my destiny, basically, because in that moment, I could have listened to either one of the voices. And I just decided to listen to the voice that was more encouraging and more positive. And I know this sounds like a story, but it's literally what happened, And so I said, all right, I'm going to make a goal. And I said, I'm going to buy my mom a house by the time I'm 21 years old. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't have any family that owns a house. As a matter of fact, we had one aunt that owned the house, and she was like the evil aunt, right? Because, when you are in lack, whoever has abundance, the ego has to make them wrong, because it's the only way that you'll feel okay with the fact that you have lack.
So was that the only evil part of her? The fact that she had...
That's it.
That was it.
The fact that she had money, she had a beautiful home, she lived on a cul-de-sac, she had a beautiful pool. And I remember going to her house being like, this ain't all that evil. Like, this is all right. Like, this is nice, And so...
I guess it's the stories maybe that why isn't she giving that to us? Was that part of it? Like, why can't we have that?
Yeah, and the reality is that you can't have it because you don't think like that and you don't work like that. It's very simple, you know? And but I just decided for myself and my family, and when I say my family is... at 18 years old, I felt responsible. I felt responsible for my mother and my two little brothers. And I just didn't want my youngest brother growing up in the same area anymore. And I wanted to give him better opportunities. So I thought, I'm going to buy my mom a house by the time I'm 21 years old. And sure enough, man, when you just make the decision, the universe opens up and like the path to the life that you want becomes very clear. You just have to have the courage to say, no more negativity. I'm going to listen to the positive side of me, And it doesn't mean to say that the negative side won't come up. It just means to say that you just no longer choose to listen. Sure enough, I met a real estate agent. I was thinking buy a house. Out of random, a real estate agent shows up in my peripheral. I asked him a question about buying a house, how much down payment. Back then the houses were $80,000. So he said, you're going to need $2,400. And I go, okay, I'm going to have to save up $2,400. And then I asked him the magic question. I said, by the way, is there any money in real estate? And he goes, yeah. And in that moment in my life, I didn't know too much, but there was something inside of me that didn't value money as much as I valued knowledge. Still to this day, I don't. Money just flows. I don't ever stress about it. I don't ever worry about it. It just flows to me. I value contribution. I value doing what it is that I love. And And I didn't realize that, but I had that at a very early age. So I looked the guy in the eye and I said, I'll tell you what, I work 6 days a week right now. I work 6 days a week and I want to work for you on Sundays for free. I don't want you to pay me anything. He goes, well, why would I do that? I go, just teach me everything there is to know about real estate. 6 months later, I had my real estate license. 12 months later, I think I sold 30 houses that first year, made just shy of 6 figures at 19. Bought my mom a house by the time I was 21. The rest is history.
Because I guess once you have that first success that you didn't think was possible, but although there was probably part of you that was like, I'm going to make this happen, it's still this quite unobtainable goal in your mind.
Yep.
But when you achieve it, it's like, wow, I've just done something I didn't think I was actually going to be able to do.
That's right.
And then that just sets you on that path of what else? What's next?
That's right.
So what was next?
Yeah. So what was next was, I wanted to start my own brokerage, and to make a long story short, I just took everything that I learned and I thought to myself, there's a whole bunch of people out there that are in this business that I'm in that don't know how to do what I know how to do. They don't know how to think how I think. They don't know how to speak like I speak. They don't know how to respond the way I respond to a client. What if I could create a business, a brokerage that just taught people everything that I know? And so sure enough, that's what I did. And, we ended up building a business that did $1 billion in sales.
I saw that. I was going to bring it up. I was like, that's a big number.
Yeah, it's a big number. It's a big number. But the craziest thing about that number, revenue wise, that was like 43 million a year is okay. What it was.
It was going for a while then.
Yeah.
20 years or something.
Yeah. Well, I built it and sold it within 10 years.
Okay. But it continued to.
Yeah. So, anyhow, the craziest thing and the thing I'm most proud of is that for me, again, like it was never about the money. Like I want to play the game at the highest level possible. And so by the time we were doing $1 billion in sales, I was only working the business 2 hours a week. That means that I was fully leveraged. That means that the business was operating without me, basically. And that to me, to me, for a kid from the ghetto, was like, a dream come true. Is that, to see that I could pull this off. And, the next step became people from across the country wanted to come and learn from me and learn what I was doing. And
outside of the real estate and more in terms of just you and your success, I guess.
Yeah. And so, and they would message me. And I was like, I don't have a vehicle for this, And then I created this event called the Relentless. And what Relentless did was it would be a 1 or 2 day event. And we'd bring in celebrity speakers to come in and speak. And I would do my part. I was the main speaker, but then we would leverage celebrity speakers. So in California, I was the first guy to bring Gary Vee out. This was before Gary Vee was like really Gary Vee. He was like starting to take up. He was only charging $90,000 for a keynote. I think now it's 3 times that, or whatever, and rightfully so, by the way. And then the next year I brought Alex Rodriguez, the famous baseball player from the New York Yankees. And then the next year, we had Ed Milet and Rob Dearden from MTV, and just all kinds of wonderful people came out. And then the next year I brought out Kobe Bryant, and it was 6 months before his passing.
Oh wow!
And that event was beautiful because in him I saw a man that was as big as they get, yet he was the kindest, most humblest, most beautiful soul. Like he was just the coolest freaking guy on earth, man. I remember when he walked through the door, the event was packed and everybody was going nuts because you're in California. So Kobe is like, it doesn't get any better than Kobe, basically, right? And so we took a break and we were going to take a 30-minute break. And I remember we had cleared everybody out of the room. The anticipation was building and everybody was waiting, call it the main entrance of the room is over there. We came out through the back and we went through what should have been a closed hallway, but it wasn't. It was open, so you could see everybody looking at us. And we walked into this room where he was going to come in from the parking garage, or wherever they come in from. And sure enough, we're waiting there, and he had he wanted wine and he wanted M&Ms ready for him.
I've heard someone else that wanted M&Ms. It seems to be like quite a celebrity
I don't know.
thing.
I don't know.
I think it was someone that wanted a specific color of M&Ms actually.
Really?
Yeah, not someone I know personally, but I remember hearing that story and thinking, wow, okay, that's specific.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But what I will tell you is that we've had when I was doing those events, we've had celebrities that wanted everything you can imagine. And they're pretty they're jerks, quite frankly. And so as a result, in my mind, I was thinking, this is Kobe Bryant. So he's he's the biggest celebrity we've ever had. It doesn't get any bigger than this guy. So he's probably going to be even that much of a bigger jerk. So that's what I was prepared for, basically, And sure enough, I remember the door opens and there's this white, silhouette of light behind him. And there's this tall guy. He walks in and he comes up to me and he kind of does one of these things and he pulls me and he goes, "What's up, man? I'm Kobe." And I was like, this guy is cool, man. He's really cool.
Do you know, I had a similar experience. Well, not to that extent, but do you know Lewis Howes?
Yeah, Lewis Howes. Yeah.
So he's obviously in America, but he was in the UK speaking at an event. I just see him in the street. This was years ago as well. And I was like, I'm just going to have to, normally I don't interrupt people now because I think I don't want to be that guy that does that and wants the picture, try to be a little bit more cool about it. But back 6 years ago, whenever I saw him, I was like, oh my God, I need to get a picture. So I ran up to him and I was like, "Hey man, I follow you, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Hey man, nice to meet you. What's your name, bro?"
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, and I think he must get, so many people doing that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of energy, because I've since had a little bit of it myself. It's a lot of energy to constantly give out that to other people.
It is.
And I can understand why some people don't respond in a receptive way, because they're obviously protective of their own energy and you can't maintain that long term, especially when you've got your own things to be focusing on. But it's always very nice when you're greeted in that way. And especially as I was an absolute nobody, not saying I'm somebody now, but I was a random guy in the street.
Sure.
But he really took the time to engage, ask me questions, said, "What'd you do?" And I thought, wow. And just the warmth in his face. And it's just, that's when you can really tell who a person is, isn't it? When the cameras aren't on.
That's right.
When there's not a special person in the room.
That's right.
And there's no agenda.
Yeah.
And sounds like you had a similar experience with Kobe there.
Yeah, man. That was that moment. And it was interesting because at that time I was in the room with my 3 kids. My ex-wife, we were going through a divorce, but we're still cordial, friendly, and I wanted her to experience that. And my brother, who, remember the little brother I told you about? He, it's so interesting because talking about him, I just get goosebumps because him and I are just we're tied together energetically in such a beautiful way. It's if I'm honest, I got Kobe Bryant for my brother.
Really? Okay.
I just wanted to make my brother happy, and so I remember Kobe walks in and he literally he starts drinking wine. My ex-wife is drinking with him. I'm not drinking, anything, but he's drinking wine. I think he had 2 or 3 glasses of wine prior to going up. He's so relaxed. My little son is eating his M&Ms and I'm like, "Don't touch his M&Ms." He goes, "Have whatever you want." And the rest is history, man. It's on my YouTube channel. You can actually see the interview that I had with him. It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And then right after that, man, that's when I went through my divorce and my mom died, and my spiritual journey began, and that's where I found myself literally everything that I had built in life no longer mattered, because I started to realize that I was really unhappy, and I started to ask myself really tough questions about life, about God, about happiness, about truth. And it led me to a space where I started to notice I was just not happy in life. And quite frankly, I didn't even know what happiness meant.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that all of the success that I had the success because if I was honest with myself, I was chasing validation.
Yeah.
I was chasing admiration. I was chasing power. And as a result of chasing, I was not comfortable with being in the present moment. And that's where my spiritual journey began. And that's where I first sat with ayahuasca.
Okay.
And that changed my life forever.
Did you do it up in like the Peru mountains, or did you
I went to Costa Rica.
Okay.
Yeah, I've sat with ayahuasca, I think 12 times. It's,
Okay,
you know,
wow.
quite a few times. And with mushrooms, 7 or 8 times. And, I think the last time I sat in ceremony for myself was about a year ago. And those moments changed my life forever. They opened my heart. They healed me. Really powerful.
Remove that layer of consciousness and just let you
Yeah.
see. Yeah. I've done some, because I lived in Bali for 3 years, very spiritual community out in there. In the
Yeah,
jungle
Bali's beautiful.
I did peyote,
Oh, yeah.
the cactus, and I did some mushrooms. I haven't done ayahuasca there, don't have it there. It's
Okay.
not really a thing, but
Yeah.
I do plan to do that at some stage.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I was very skeptical at first because I was, at the time, 5-6 years clean and sober. I went to rehab.
Drugs.
Drugs and alcohol. So I was battling with the conflict of, you know, is this a mind-altering substance that I shouldn't really be taking?
Sure.
The first time I did the peyote, the only time I did peyote, I'll be honest, I didn't have a full experience of it because everything in my body was telling me this is wrong. Because I conditioned myself through drug and alcohol meetings and things. Drugs leads to jails, institutions, and death. Those are the 3 things they tell you.
Yep, I got you, man.
You know, you cannot slip. You know, and it's cunning and it's baffling and it will deceive you. And I was thinking, oh, it's got me. You know, and I'm sitting in a circle like I used to when I'd taken drugs, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is. And then I don't know. I had to leave. So I actually, and they said, you know, I said, oh, I really want to leave. They said, it's really disrespectful to break the circle. I said, I still got to go.
Yeah. That's okay. I mean,
So it was part of my journey.
Yeah, it's
at
part
the
of
time.
your journey.
And I kind of felt good for doing it, but at the same time, I know there probably would have also been a lot of benefits to push through that resistance and actually get the outcome I was looking for. But I was so conflicted, it didn't feel safe or right.
Yeah.
But then I started with mushrooms instead, did a few mushroom ceremonies instead. That seemed to be much lighter for me.
Beautiful.
And then, then I'm more open and receptive to it, but it's been a while since I've sort of stepped into that. But yeah, I'm looking to explore that as well.
Yeah, I want to speak to that. You know, number one, I want to speak about, you know, whenever we are addicted to drugs or alcohol or any sort of, you know, substance, what's happening is that is an outward reflection of something deep that is happening inward. You know, we feel deeply disconnected inward, and
using an external substance to fix an internal problem.
The thing is, it'll never fix it. It just puts a Band-Aid over it, you know, and it helps you to escape. And what it helps you to escape is the present moment,
and
right?
yourself.
Absolutely. And the trauma and all of those things. And so, you know, the second thing that I want to do, and I want to share this because I don't think out here in the UK plant medicine is as prevalent as it is in the US. No. But the second thing is this word drug, right? Where, you know, when I think of a drug, I think of something that is like, you know, man-made. And I also think of something that is going to try to take you away from the present moment, your pain, your fears, you know, your anxieties, whatever the case may be. And when I think of plant medicine, when I think of ayahuasca, for example, or when I think of mushrooms, you know, I think of something that is not man-made. I think of something that it comes from the earth. It's literally the medicine that God has given us to heal ourselves. Now, you won't hear that in the mainstream media. You will not hear that at church and religion. You will not hear that anywhere.
But you might hear it in Silicon Valley and stuff like that.
You might. But, you know, part of your journey in life is to understand that there are 2 worlds. There's 2 versions of ourselves. There's the societal self, and then there's the spiritual self, you know. And all of us have a spiritual self. The problem is that the third thing that I want to mention is that we are so deep, man. We're so deeply ingrained in this system, this thing called the matrix. That people ask me all the time, you know, do you think we need plant medicine to heal? The answer is no, you don't. No. The answer is once you are free, you can connect spiritually to source, and source can heal you in magical ways. The problem is is that where we are in this time in history, we are so deep down the rabbit hole that I would say yes.
It can be a quick exposure to reality. Well, not reality, but
the reality of who we are,
yeah,
the
the
reality
larger
of
reality.
universal consciousness, universal love. And so, the answer is no and yes.
Yeah, I think it's important that people have some kind of foundational layer of personal development before diving into those things, because they could potentially be dangerous. And even my wife, who I did mushrooms with once, and she's very much into all sorts of personal development. She's got a master's degree in mental health counselling, and I shouldn't even be exposing that she's done this. Maybe she might not want to share it, but anyway, even she had a little bit of an uncomfortable time on it once, where you have a bit of an I could never say the word existential crisis. How do you say that word? Existential.
Yeah, whatever.
The word where you kind of question reality, but not in a empowering way, but in a kind of like headfucky kind of trippy, what the hell are we doing on earth kind of thing.
Well,
so that can be, if people are kind of not in the best place and they try and jump to that,
sure,
that can be dangerous. But I've also, there's one other thing that just want to mention that you touched upon there, is I've actually also had similar sort of psychedelic experiences on breath work. I don't know if you've and there's no drug at all.
None at all.
But you're still accessing some kind of higher
universal
power.
consciousness.
And
absolutely.
So I think, if we're trying to maybe give a bit of well-being advice, I think work on yourself first, get that in place to the point where you can open your horizons to what's actually possible and available for you. Then start to dive into the body, the self, maybe some breath work.
Sure.
And then at that point, I think is a good place for people to start to go to those, I don't want to say extremities, but they are
the next level.
Yeah, the next level.
And that's where my story changes. My story changes because I started to realize that, for my life, my path was to help people spiritually. And so that event, Relentless, after Kobe passed, I just didn't feel right with a lot of things. I didn't feel right, number one, with ever having anybody else at an event ever again, just to honor him, and then the second thing was I didn't feel comfortable with the name, because when you're in your masculine, right? And when you're in this energy of this world, this 3D dimension that we live in, everything is about grinding and going for it and going for your goals and going for your dreams and success and so forth and so on, and being relentless about it.
And sort of missing everything along the way.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And so when you find the truth, you find that the truth of what you've been seeking for all along, it's not out there. It's not in a goal. It's not in a certain amount of money. It's not in an accomplishment. It's in here. It's in here. And so, I discovered that truth for myself. And so I started to really think about my event and the name of the event. And then I thought to myself, you know what I want to do? I want to help people awaken to the truth of who they are. And so that's when my event Awaken was born. And the second thing that I thought was okay, look, I know the power that this plant medicine has, but I also know that for a lot of people, they're not like me. I'm crazy. I just want to go direct to the source. So I started with ayahuasca with no training, no nothing. I was just I'm in.
Have you done the not Cambo, the frog?
I did Cambo,
but not Cambo, the other one, the other frog one that you smoke.
Bufo.
Bufo. Have you done that one?
I haven't done that one
because I've been told that one's at a different
that
level.
One is.
I spoke to a guy and he said, because we were doing the peyote in Bali, and he said, bro, I did Bufo a few weeks ago. He said, I'm just about coming back to reality now. He's it ripped back the fabric of my mind. That's what he said. And he said he exposed what
you go straight
what the reality
to the universe.
Is.
Yeah.
And he said it was hard to settle back into the normal world.
Yeah.
Because I knew it wasn't real. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most progressive one I've heard.
And to anybody who's listening, if you look at Mike Tyson, and if you look at Mike Tyson's transformation from the unstoppable raging animal that he once was,
biting people's ears
to this calm, loving being. Yeah. It was plant medicine, but for him it was Bufo.
Right.
But again, think about what I said is that we're so down the rabbit hole. We're so deep. Mike was so deep in anger that he needed something like
And I
that
guess
to take
everything
them.
works for different people in a different
Absolutely,
way. And
man.
then, you know,
You're called. The
Yeah,
medicine calls
yeah,
you. And
yeah.
so back to my event. And so I wanted to give people an experience that was like plant medicine, that was just as powerful, just as profound, and just as healing without the medicine.
Okay.
And so then I created this 3-day event called Awaken Your Highest Self, where it's a combination of my real world life/business teaching, right? That I used to do back in the day, with deep meditation and deep breath work.
Okay.
And we help people heal the number one wounds that they have. Do you know what they are, by the way?
Number one wounds.
Number one wound that a human being has. The number one thing that stops a human being from
Not
becoming
feeling
who
loved.
they want to become, from achieving all that they want to achieve, if you want to use that word, and from feeling safe and within themselves and knowing their true power. Do you know what it is?
Either not being enough or not being loved.
But where
That's
do you
what it
learn
is.
that?
Where do we learn it?
Where do you learn that you're not enough? And where do you
From our parents and our upbringing.
bingo? It's
Yeah.
the mother and father wound.
Under the age of 7, apparently, where it's
Yep.
all forming and
Yep. Yeah.
absorbing all the information.
Absolutely.
So you got to go right back to the beginning and see where you created
That's
the
it.
stories.
That's it. So that's what we help people do now. And
Nice.
that's what I do now.
Brilliant.
That's what I do.
So I'd like to step back a little bit to the selling of the business.
Sure.
Because interestingly, I'm just trying to, there's obviously adversity in those early stages of the food stamps and the grinding, but it's interesting because everyone's got a different, version of their story and adversity into an asset. And although there'll be many people that, would probably not rightly, say that this isn't an adversity, in some respects it is. I'm kind of just going to put it out there. In a sense, your business was the adversity, and it's in a way, because it was. I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't what you was meant to be doing, but you wasn't happy, and it was 20 years in, and it was $1 billion, but it was an adversity, because if you'd have carried on down that path and hadn't met that deadline,
I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, or you would have died and just not been happy. So your adversity was building $1 billion business, which, look, it's all about perspective, right? And to you, that was. So tell me, I'd love to know why you sold the business, and then once you sold it, sort of that whole journey of the thinking around, because there'll be a lot of people that are way before this stage, and they're still thinking about making all the money, and they're still thinking about the potential exit, and once I exit, then I'll retire. But you've obviously already gone through that whole thing. And I don't think I've ever met a successful person that's reached that success that's not said, "Oh, it didn't give me what I wanted." It's very rare that you find someone that's like, "Yeah, I wanted all this money, and then I made that money, and then I was happy."
Yeah.
So it is so common. Yet everybody who hasn't reached that level of success or want to find it out for themselves. But I think it's really important for people to hear as much of that journey that you can share, so that they can really absorb and go, yeah, maybe I am climbing a ladder that's propped up against the wrong wall.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is that people have to climb the ladder
For themselves.
You know what, man? Like it's the only way you'll learn. It's like telling somebody. I deal with young guys all the time, and young guys will come and message me, and not as much anymore because I'm on a different energy path or wavelength or whatever. But back in the day, people say, hey, you know what? When I get my first check, I want to buy an S-Class Mercedes or a Ferrari or Lamborghini, whatever they want, right? It's like you gotta go get the luxury car to realize that the luxury car does not make you happy.
Yeah.
And without the experience, you'll never really know.
Yeah. Because everyone's got that thing where they feel like they're different from everybody else anyway, haven't they? They're like, oh yeah, he might not be happy with it, but I will be.
Yeah, exactly. But then you get it, and as well as I do, you get it, and it lasts a week, and then it's just a car.
Yeah, and then you're like, I need a jet, or
unless
need a yacht.
Unless you heal that.
Yeah.
Unless you heal that part of you. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it wasn't just my business. It was my business and my marriage.
Yeah.
Right? Because what I didn't realize, man, is that back when I was younger, my heart essentially and my heart chakra was never opened. And, you know, I think that's why people connect with me, is that I'm a real world former kick-ass business guy who can now speak to you about very spiritual things, you know? And so when I say that my heart chakra wasn't open, I say that because my mom didn't know how to show me love. Because my mom's mom didn't know how to show her love. Because my mom's mom died when my mom was only 13 days old. So think about that. Think about a little girl coming into this world and never having experienced her mother's love. She will not energetically know or understand, as much as she loves you, how to show that love to you. Do you understand what I mean? So I grew up, you know, I love my mom and my mom loved me, but we didn't know how to show that
Knew
love
it,
to
didn't necessarily feel it.
You know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, feeling it is everything. Knowing it is, you can know a lot of things, but feeling that's
That's what it's all about.
that's the whole shebang right there, right? So, so I didn't realize this, but I, my whole life, created a story that as soon as I'm 18 and I can do this, I'm going to go out there and build a big business and make a lot of money and get a wife. And when I have those things, I'll find love.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way, but my life drove me to that because that's what I thought I needed in order to be successful and to be happy and be at peace.
This is such a powerful, because this is exactly what I try and share, but it's just slightly different for me. It was actually the same with my mum. She was very emotionally disconnected, but that wasn't because she didn't have a mum. It's because they were just from an old school family where you don't speak unless you're spoken to, and it just didn't express or display love. So I didn't get any cuddles or I love yous and all that sort of stuff. My mum practically provided for me. I knew she loved me, but yet there's no warmth there.
Yeah.
But my dad, on the other hand, was very abusive. He'd actually hit me, he'd call me names and all these sorts of things. And because, for some reason, because he was giving me less love than my mum, even though it was sort of kind of void in both avenues, you crave the one you don't have the most. You know, voids create values. I literally say this on every podcast. I've got to stop saying it. It's Dr. John DeMartini. He talks about voids create values. And I think that's one of the number one things of, I don't know, people can understand that the things that have happened to them in their past have now driven them in a counteractive way to propel them forward.
That's right.
So I know that from wanting my dad to love me, you know, I know that cognitively now, but I didn't know this back then. Like you said, it's just a subconscious pattern and behavior that's programmed and running out, trying to seek something that you don't even know what you're seeking.
Right.
But it was a need for love, which I didn't understand. I never felt it. And the only way that I could, and again, I didn't understand this, but the closest thing that I could find to love was significance. So I first tried to get into acting, then that didn't quite work. So I started getting into crime, getting attention on me.
That's right.
And in a way, I was getting a bit of significance, and it was giving me something. So I was like, this works, I think, you know. And it was much later in my life when I went through therapy and rehab and all sorts of things, where I was like, oh, it wasn't significant. It was love. I just wanted daddy to love me.
That's right.
And it just always comes back to the cliche, kind of like you said earlier, it all stems back to the same thing. And it really does. Like, we all just want people to love us, and we want to feel enough.
That's it.
And it's usually the people closest to us, like our family and things like that.
Yeah.
And if we can learn to love ourselves even without that, you know, that's probably the number one thing. If you can get to the point where you're like, do you know what, regardless of whether or not they're able to display love to me or I think they love me, I love myself.
That's right.
And it doesn't really matter what they say or think, and I'm okay.
That's right.
That's the ultimate success, really, isn't it?
That's
right.
right.
That's not easy. That's not easy.
That takes an immense amount of work. And I know, because I can say this, I am not saying this from an egotistical place. I'm just trying to share with people, like, this conversation is beautiful because, number one, men don't have it. But then number two, it does open up like this, like, how will I ever get there? I'm telling you, you can get there. Mm-hmm. You can get there. It takes going into the parts of you that you are most afraid to meet, you know, and I just kept going back in and going back in and going back in because then all of that you have inside of you, it impacts your relationship. It impacts your ability to give or not give love to your wife. Mm-hmm. It impacts your ability to receive or not receive love from your wife. And then get ready, because I'm a father of 3 with another one on the way. It impacts your ability to give love to your children.
And then them to their children.
Right.
Now
So
we're
it's like
talking about
someone's got to heal it.
generational healing.
Exactly. And if you, like in your case, if you think back to your father was the way he was because his father was. You knew it.
Yeah.
I felt it.
Yeah. He
Right?
told me he hated his dad. So.
Exactly. So as a result, he hated himself.
And he also then probably, because he hated his dad, he probably thought he should hate me.
Well, he didn't know any other way to be.
Yeah.
It wasn't even about you.
And that's another powerful thing, isn't it? You know, not just learning to love yourself, but learning that you're not the problem.
No.
And that it's their shit.
But also learning to forgive, man. Because until you're able to forgive, there's residue. Until we're able to see our parents, again, I'm going to say something right now, and you're going to get it up here. But here is a whole different ball game. You don't read a book or listen to a podcast to do that. You got to go do the work, right?
You got to do 12 ayahuasca ceremonies.
Or come to Awaken, honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd love to have you. We're going to have one here in London in April. But I'd love to have you as my guest. I think it would be wonderful. But what I'm about to say is until you can forgive your mother and father and realize that they were just a wounded little boy or a little girl who came into this world looking for love and didn't get the very thing that they wanted. And as a result, they became the version of them that you experienced. Until you can get to that space, man, and you love them for just the way they are, there's still that residue inside, you know.
And there's also something I learned as well in rehab, which was so powerful for me, because I think there's a lot of people that hold on to the resentment because they don't feel like they want to give that to the other person. They're like, they don't deserve it. The things they put them through, I don't want to give you that. But what they don't realize, and I heard this expression and it clicked home, is resentments keep you sick.
That's right, bro.
And it was like, oh, okay, so I'm forgiving them for me.
It's not about
for them. Oh, so it'll make this is gonna make me better.
Yes.
This is not about like allowing them to feel guilt free for what they did. They don't even need to know that we're giving this act of forgiveness to them.
But can I tell you what happens? Because I remember I was on stage. And back then, you know, there were only like 200 people in the room at the event, you know, whatever. And I remember I was like, wow, this is beautiful. Like all these people are healing right now. Like, oh my God. Like it was such at the beginning. I didn't realize what we were embarking on, you know, and I'm standing on the stage and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. And clear as day, I heard God's voice. Clear as day. And once you get deeper, you know it's not God. It's source. You can't put God in a box like that. But clear as day, I heard the voice. You know, you'll never help them become all that they're intended to become unless you become all that you're intended to become. And I, you know, in my ego self, this was like 3 years ago. I was still going through the journey. I was like, yeah, but I got it. Like I'm the man. I'm the man. You're like, yeah, but you'll never be
Rich Litvin. You know Rich Litvin?
No.
Wrote The Prosperous Coach. Says you can only take someone as deep as you've been yourself.
You've been yourself. That's right.
It's his quote.
That's right. Yeah.
Very, very true.
So then the voice comes back and says, yeah, but the only way you'll do that is to forgive your father. And I'm on stage. Everybody's laying down. They're doing their thing. And I'm starting to have this conversation in myself like, no, I'm not going to do that. Fuck that. No, he did this. He did that. He left me. He did. And I started listing off all the reasons why it was okay for me to hold on to the pain.
Yeah, because that's actually easier than accepting that you've got to, you know, confront that.
Well, that's what the ego wants. See, the ego wants to keep you in this box, in this paradigm that it has you in. And that feels safe to you. The unknown is unsafe to us, right? And yet the unknown and the very thing that causes us to feel unsafe and the very thing that we're afraid of is the very door we have to walk through in order to get to the truth of who we are.
And freedom.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it.
So if there was a top tip you could give away to conclude this podcast on anybody who's in some sort of difficult adversity, whatever that means to them right now, and they're looking to not just get through it, but to be inspired by the fact that they can turn this into something greater than they can even imagine right now, what would you say?
I would say the greatest thing that a human being can do. Listen, there's two answers for that. The old me would have said, you know, what every influencer out there says, like, go out there and grind and don't stop until you make it happen. Yes, you will eventually get there and you will eventually fix it. No problem. The thing is, at what cost? Like, what will that cost you? Will that cost you your health? Will that cost you time with your children? Will that cost you your relationship? Because that kind of lifestyle, listen, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to be very successful. You're going to achieve everything that you've ever wanted to achieve. I'm telling you because I did it. But also you're going to be miserable.
Yeah. And how can you enjoy that money if you're sat behind a laptop all day long anyway?
That's right. That's right. And so what I would say is the other way is learn to quiet this thing. Learn and begin the process of quieting your mind so that you can connect to universal consciousness. And from that connection, you will get the answer. If you listen, and if you listen carefully, the answer will come up. But you got to give yourself enough time to connect so it's no longer your thinking and your mind. It's you're connecting to source. And that's when you really start like living out of power.
Okay.
Because it's no longer just you.
So there's no, so I like that. So that you're not necessarily saying this is what you need to do. It's like go and discover for yourself what comes up and what you need to do for you.
Because it's the answer is not in me or in you. The answer is in you. It's
I like
in
that.
yeah.
Oh, I shared that before. It's good.
Yeah.
One question I'd like to ask to finish this off is, because I often think to myself, because I am on that same trajectory of wanting success. I don't mind admitting that. By
the way, can I say something real fast? I didn't mean this to sound like there's nothing wrong with success.
Course,
you know,
I
love what I do. I'm successful at what I do at doing it. It's just not my reason for existing.
Yeah. Well, that was basically my question, because in my mind, my trajectory of life is pretty much like yours, but I kind of already have the foresight. I was like, I want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then I want to then go and do whatever the hell I like.
Sure.
Because you do need that.
Sure.
Because it's much more difficult to do all the things you want to do with no money, right?
100%.
So, and it's difficult to balance both. I know that's the ideal, but they sometimes conflict each other, and sometimes you end up becoming a bit stagnant with one, and you realize you don't have either of the, you know. So the question I've got is, if you could go back, 20 years before you started your business, knowing what you know now, would you continue on with that path of let's just crush it and make money and then get to where I am? Or would you go, do you know what? Actually, I would do things differently.
I wouldn't change anything.
Okay.
And I wouldn't change anything because I am who I am today because of all of it.
Yeah.
So like, you have to go through what you go through in order to become who it is that you want to become. There's no way it is what it is.
Because if you'd have maybe, figured this stuff out a little bit earlier, then yes, you might have been happy, but you could have just been sitting on a beach somewhere in Bali.
You could have been not doing anything.
Lives and not have no money and, have restrictions and not actually be fully fulfilled, but just be content.
That's right.
Which that needs to help.
Help yourself first, right? Go through the parts of yourself that you're afraid to meet. Then you'll be free and then you'll be able to help other people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Danny, for coming on,
Thank you,
turning
man.
your adversity into an asset, and enjoy your time in London. And I hope the birth is amazing, and look forward to seeing the pictures.
Yeah, and I'd love to share. Instagram is
of course. Yeah,
it's big for us.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, Danny Morel on Instagram, TikTok, and then the event Awaken will be here in April. It'll be April 14th, 15th, and 16th, I believe.
Okay, cool.
And that's a 3-day event. It'll be at Wembley Stadium in one of the rooms there. It's going to be really awesome.
Cool. So you staying here this whole time after the birth?
No, we'll
jump
go and then
forwards.
come back. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah,
and
man.
If
Thanks for
people
having
want
me.
to catch you, then head over to Instagram and check Danny out.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Yeah.